I'm just having to put my faith completely in God and know that He has a better plan. And that's pretty much where I'm at. My wife is still struggling.
In my heart, I believe. Now, this is just the way I feel.
I respect that. Totally respect
I
that.
feel that somebody has got her hid out somewhere.
Okay.
And is keeping her away from us.
Hello everyone, and welcome. As a seasoned crime analyst and storyteller, I'm here to unravel the complex details of true crime cases and present them in a way that's both engaging and easy to understand. Today, we're diving deep into the latest developments in the Summer Wells case. No screams, no footprints, no signs of a struggle. But a 15-year-old boy insists he saw Summer Wells go under the water that morning. She was coughing, looked worn out, then fell asleep. Hours later, she was gone. Not kidnapped, not taken away, just gone. That same day, a video surfaced showing her motionless in the back seat, her eyes closed, holding a water bottle as if she were sleeping. But there was a look on her face that just didn't sit right. She was so still, so quiet, and yet no one called 911 to report an accident. They waited until 6:30 p.m. to report her missing. For 4 years, this theory has been a persistent whisper. What if Summer drowned and her family covered it up? What if the real crime wasn't the event itself but the choice to lie about it? This script dives into a theory that could tie everything together and the strange quiet that has surrounded it. Summer Wells was 5 years old when she vanished on June 15, 2021. 4 years have passed and there's still no trace of her. No body, no suspects, no arrests. The only theory that has truly gained traction is that Summer Wells drowned. This isn't a wild, sensational idea. In fact, it's unsettlingly straightforward. That morning, Summer's mother, Candus Bly, took her daughter swimming at Warriors Path State Park, specifically at a small spot called Horse Pond. They were joined by Candus's mother, Candace Harrer, and a teenage boy named Hunter, who was 15 at the time. In a later interview, Hunter said Summer had gone underwater while swimming. It wasn't for long, maybe just 5 or 10 seconds, but it was long enough for him to jump in and pull her out. He recalled that she came up coughing and looked exhausted. He said she didn't seem right. On the way home, she fell asleep in the car. Candace later denied the entire account. She insisted that nothing had happened in the water, that Summer was just fine, happy, and cheerful, and that she had simply fallen asleep in the car like any kid would after swimming. But Candace had a history of changing her story. She contradicted herself, mixed up the timeline, and left out key details. The only version of that day that hinted at a possible medical emergency was Hunter's. And if he was telling the truth, then everything changes. Dry drowning is rare, but it is a real phenomenon. It's when a person inhales water into their airways, causing a spasm or inflammation, often hours after they've gotten out of the water. It doesn't always show serious symptoms right away. In young children, the signs can be subtle: coughing, fatigue, shallow breathing, vomiting, or drowsiness. Some kids seem totally fine until they suddenly pass out. If Summer had inhaled water and no one had gotten her medical help, she could have gone into respiratory distress without anyone noticing until it was too late. There is a video, filmed shortly after the swim, that shows Summer asleep in the back seat of a car. Her eyes are closed, she's holding a bottle, her head is tilted, her body isn't moving. The video was reportedly filmed by her grandmother, Candace Harrer, and posted to social media the same day. Some viewers said Summer looked incredibly peaceful. Others saw something different: too quiet, too pale, too still. The kind of stillness that isn't found in normal sleep. After that video, Summer was never seen again, not on surveillance footage, not by neighbors, and not by anyone outside her family, who later reported her missing. There's no video proof that she ever made it back inside the house. Her 3 older brothers, ages 7 to 12, were reportedly watching TV. No one remembers hearing her come down the stairs. No one remembers anything out of the ordinary. If Summer died from secondary drowning, there are 2 possibilities. Either she died in the car on the way home, and the adults chose not to call for help, or she died later that afternoon somewhere in the house. And by the time they realized what had happened, the decision had already been made not to report the accident. The first possibility is harder to prove. It would mean all three adults, Candus, Candace Harrer, and possibly Don Wells, if he was contacted, had a deliberate plan to hide the truth from the moment they left the park. But the second version is simpler. It leaves room for shock, denial, and panic. A child who appears to be sleeping. Hours pass. She doesn't wake up. Someone checks. Someone notices. Someone panics. And in that panic, a choice is made. Call 911 and risk losing everything: custody, reputation, freedom, or say she's gone. There are compelling reasons to believe this theory. It explains Summer's disappearance during the 3:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. window. It explains why no one else saw her that day. It explains why Candus posted a video of her daughter sleeping but never mentioned anything unusual until much later. It explains why her stories were so inconsistent, why Hunter's story was doubted but never actually disproven, and why no physical evidence ever pointed to an abduction. The police dogs lost Summer's scent just a few feet from the house. There was no sign of a forced entry, no tracks, no struggle, and no screams were heard. The area had been searched for weeks. If Summer had wandered into the woods, there would have been something, anything. If she had been taken, there would have been a sign, a broken window, a sound, a witness. But if she had died in that house, and if someone had moved her body before the police arrived, there would have been nothing to find. Accepting this theory means accepting that the truth wasn't hidden in the woods, in a kidnapping plot, or with strangers. It means it was in the house the entire time. It means that the last person to see Summer alive wasn't a hero, but a liar. Whether it happened in the water or after the car ride home, whether it happened quickly or slowly, intentionally or unintentionally, this theory leads to one conclusion: Summer Wells died that day. If it was an accident, it wasn't necessarily a crime, until someone chose to cover it up. What do you think of this theory? Do you find the idea of a cover-up more plausible than a random abduction, given the lack of evidence? The new evidence completely changed the timeline. The 15-year-old boy, not a family member, not someone who lived on Ben Hill Road, just a teenager and a friend of Candus Bly's son. And his name was Hunter, and he was invited to a casual summer picnic that morning. Of all the people involved on Summer's last known day, he was the only one who dared to say she went under the water. According to Hunter, it happened at Horse Pond in Warriors Path State Park. He said Summer was in the water when she went under. He couldn't say for how long, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, but it was long enough for him to jump in and save her. She came to the surface, coughed, and then, he said, she looked unwell. Something was wrong. This wasn't a dramatic rescue. He didn't do CPR, he didn't panic. But what he described was clear. A 5-year-old girl had inhaled water. She wasn't crying, she wasn't laughing, she was quiet. Shortly after that, according to Hunter, they left the park. Summer got into the back seat, lay down, held a bottle, and slept. At least, that's what they told themselves. Hunter's account doesn't end there. He also claimed that Candus bought twisted tea, shared a vape with him, and acted strangely throughout the day. He said she was distracted, irritated, and constantly on her phone. He said she seemed more focused on posting videos than watching her daughter. These details, while not directly linked to Summer's condition, paint a larger picture of negligence, distraction, and a growing tension as the day went on. Candus, for her part, denies everything. She said Summer never went under the water, never coughed, and never looked tired. She dismissed Hunter's entire story as a fantasy and claimed he made it all up. The strange thing is, everyone believed her. Hunter's interview was public, detailed, and emotionally raw. He wasn't reading from a script. He stumbled over his words and occasionally contradicted himself, but he was certain about the part that mattered. Summer went underwater, and she didn't look okay. But once Candus refuted it, the narrative shifted. News stations didn't follow up. Investigators didn't confirm or deny his version. And just like that, his account, arguably the most detailed timeline of Summer's final hours, was buried under a mountain of rumors. Why? Because he was a teenager, because he wasn't family, because his version didn't match the official story built around Candus's timeline. Or maybe because if he was telling the truth, then the last person to witness Summer alive wasn't her mother, it was him. And that changes everything. If Hunter was right, then the medical risk was real. A child inhaling water, showing signs of fatigue, falling asleep, that's a textbook scenario for secondary drowning. If that's what happened, then Summer's condition should have triggered alarm bells, but it didn't. Instead, her mother filmed her in the back seat and uploaded the footage to social media. Was that video proof she was still alive, or was it a preemptive attempt to say, "She was fine when I last saw her"? Hunter wasn't in the car when they arrived home. His story ends before the real timeline begins, the 3-hour gap between arriving at Ben Hill Road and the 911 call. That gap is where everything falls apart. If Summer was already in distress during the car ride and no one intervened, then the clock was ticking. If she died shortly after getting home, then Hunter's words weren't just a teenage memory, they were the only warning anyone ever gave. And yet those words were dismissed, not just by Candus but by the public, by the case itself. No official statement from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation ever addressed Hunter's claims. His name wasn't included in press releases, his timeline wasn't cross-examined in court. The interview existed, but it wasn't treated as evidence. It's as if the case was allergic to the idea of drowning. Perhaps because if it was true, then the rest of the case, the vanishing from the basement, the abduction theories, the multi-agency search, was all built on a lie. This isn't to say Hunter was perfect. He was young, emotional, and under pressure. Some of his claims, like sharing alcohol or vaping with an adult, may have damaged his credibility. But even if half of what he said was false, the central detail remains unshaken. A girl went underwater, she came up coughing, she looked tired, and then she was never seen again. That detail has never been disproven. Candus can say it didn't happen, but she can't explain why the only video from that day shows Summer in a state of complete stillness. She can't explain the missing 3 hours. Out of everyone who was there, only Hunter said what no one else would. If Hunter had lied, it would have been easy to disprove. There were only 4 people at the park. Someone could have said he wasn't even there, but no one did. So the question is, why was his voice erased, not refuted, not corrected, just ignored? Maybe because that story, the one where a little girl died from an accident and the people around her didn't act fast enough, was too hard to face. Because if Hunter told the truth, then Summer's death wasn't caused by violence or evil, or a stranger in the woods. It was caused by silence. And by the time anyone tried to speak, it was already too late. Do you think Hunter's story holds more weight because he wasn't part of the immediate family? Or do you believe his age and other claims make him less credible? There is only one visual record of Summer Wells after she left Warriors Path State Park. It is not surveillance footage. It is not from a store camera. It is not a moment of laughter, movement, or sound. It's a short, silent video taken inside a parked car. In it, Summer lies in the back seat on her back. 2 large milk jugs sit beside her. Her head tilts gently toward the door, and her face is clearly visible, turned toward the camera. Her body doesn't move. The video was filmed by her mother, Candus Bly, sometime after they left the park and before they returned to the house on Ben Hill Road. It was posted online shortly after. Candus Bly later claimed the video was proof that Summer was fine, just tired, sleeping off the day's activities, but almost immediately people began to question what they were seeing. Summer's stillness in the video felt unnatural. Her skin appeared pale, her lips slightly parted, her limbs completely relaxed. No twitches, no breath movements, no facial adjustments. For some, it resembled sleep. For others, it looked like an absence, an eerie calm that felt less like rest and more like the end of something. To date, no medical professional has publicly reviewed or authenticated the video. There's been no forensic analysis of her breathing pattern, no confirmation that she was alive at the time it was taken. But that hasn't stopped thousands of people from studying every frame, looking for signs of life or death. One detail that often stands out is the position of her head. Her head leans slightly to the left, resting against the seat or a cardboard box. Her arms rest loosely by her sides. Children, even when asleep, tend to fidget, adjust, and reflexively respond to sound or light. In this clip, Summer doesn't do any of that. There's no shift in her posture. There's no visible interaction from the person filming, no flinch, just stillness. There's also the timing. Candus Bly claimed the video was taken just before arriving home, but if that's true, it narrows the window even more. The moment that video ends, Summer is never seen again. No neighbors report seeing her enter the house. No other photos were taken. No follow-up videos. That single clip is the last time the world saw her. And that makes it important, not just as a record, but as a message, because someone decided to film her. Someone in that moment believed it was necessary to document Summer sleeping. The question is why? Most parents don't feel the need to record their child napping in a car, especially after a routine trip to the park. Unless, of course, they sense something is wrong, unless they're worried someone will ask questions later, unless they already know this may be the last time the child is seen and they need proof that she was okay. Was this video a memorial, or was it evidence? The idea that the video was created preemptively to show Summer was alive after the swim raises difficult questions. If she had indeed gone under the water and if symptoms of secondary drowning had begun, then the people with her may have noticed subtle signs, the sluggishness, the lack of energy, the deep sleep. Perhaps Candus or her mother thought Summer looked off but hoped she'd just sleep it off. Maybe they thought filming her would ease future concerns. Or maybe they suspected something was terribly wrong and this was their only way to say, she was fine when we left. But the video doesn't answer anything. It only adds more layers of silence. In cases of child deaths, particularly sudden or unexpected ones, video footage can provide critical clues. The positioning of the neck, the openness of the airway, the coloration of the skin, the stiffness of limbs, all can offer indicators. In this case, no official review has been made public. Law enforcement hasn't commented on whether they consider the video helpful, misleading, or irrelevant. It was simply allowed to exist out in the open, underanalyzed, and quietly accepted. And yet, it may be the most telling piece of evidence in the case. Because if Summer died after the swim, either in the car or shortly after arriving home, then this footage captures her during that critical window. Whether she was alive or not in that moment becomes central, not just to the timeline, but to the possibility of intent. If she was already unconscious, unresponsive, or in distress, then filming her instead of seeking help becomes deeply problematic. If she was already gone, then posting the video publicly becomes something darker, a lie wrapped in the appearance of normalcy. It's worth noting that Summer is alone in the frame. There's no adult voice narrating, no fingers brushing her hair, no one adjusting her seatbelt. It's not a warm family moment, it's surveillance. Quiet, deliberate, emotionless. And still, there's the argument. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe everyone is overthinking it. Maybe, like millions of kids after a hot Tennessee day, she just passed out in the back seat and that's all it was. But then, why was this the only clip shared? Why post that and nothing after? Why no photos of her coming home, planting flowers, or walking inside the house? Why does the documented timeline of Summer Wells's final day end with her unconscious in a car? The lack of follow-up is as loud as the silence in the video itself. If the video was posted to prove Summer was alive at a certain time, then it should have been the beginning of a documented afternoon. Instead, it's the end. No further updates, no family moments, no casual posts. Just this one frozen image of a girl no longer able to respond. In the absence of a body, in the absence of physical evidence, moments like this carry more weight than they should. They become forensic substitutes for facts, and in this case, the last living image of Summer Wells may not show life at all. It may show the moment the lie began. How do you interpret the video of Summer in the car? Do you see a sleeping child or something more chilling? From approximately 3:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. on June 15, 2021, a 3-hour gap stands like a void in the case of Summer Wells. It is the last known period in which something could have been done, and yet nothing was seen. No outside witnesses, no images, no confirmed sightings, just silence and a rapidly evolving story that continues to shift. 4 years later, the video of Summer sleeping in the car is believed to have been taken shortly before 3:30 p.m. After that, everything becomes internal. Every statement, every claim, every timeline comes from inside the Wells household. No store receipts, no hospital records, no neighbors. From this point forward, the truth becomes a closed circuit. Candus Bly claimed that after they returned home to Ben Hill Road, she walked Summer inside the house, told her to go play in the basement, and then went to help her mother, Gerry, with planting flowers near the trailer. She said she was outside for just 2 minutes, and when she came back, Summer was gone. That moment, the supposed instant disappearance, was given as the spark that prompted the 911 call around 6:23 p.m., but there's a problem with that timeline. According to multiple estimates, the family returned home sometime between 3:15 and 3:30 p.m. The call to emergency services wasn't made until 3 hours later. During that window, no one outside the home saw Summer, no photos were posted, no phone pings placed them elsewhere. The only people who can speak to that period are the mother, the grandmother, and the 3 brothers. Candus has repeatedly stated that she was only gone for 2 minutes. But in most cases, when a child disappears, the call to police is made quickly, especially in rural areas where abductions are rare and the terrain can be dangerous. If Summer truly vanished in that short span, why did it take hours to report her missing? Then there are the 3 boys, Summer's brothers. It's been said that they were watching YouTube or television at the time. They allegedly did not see Summer walk down to the basement, nor did they hear anything unusual. But that itself raises questions. In a small house with thin walls and open floors, how does a 5-year-old girl walk in, disappear, and leave no trace, without a sound, without being seen? There were no screams, no signs of struggle, no broken doors. According to the official story, she simply vanished. But what if that isn't what happened? What if by the time they arrived home, or shortly after, Summer was already unconscious, unwell, or even deceased? This possibility reframes the entire timeline. It would explain the lack of urgency, the absence of chaos, the quiet pacing of the afternoon. Because if the adults knew or suspected that Summer had died, then the hours between 3:30 and 6:30 weren't spent looking for her. They were spent deciding what to do next. During those hours, no emergency call was made, no neighbors were alerted, no community search was started. Instead, flowers were planted. Candus Bly reportedly sat on a camper step. The brothers were left to themselves, and in the background, whatever had happened to Summer was being processed, not publicly, but internally. One theory is that Summer died at home shortly after arriving due to complications from dry drowning or heat exhaustion. If so, the decision not to seek medical help, whether from fear, guilt, or panic, turned a tragedy into a mystery. It transformed a preventable death into an unresolved disappearance. And if Summer had already passed away, then what followed was not a search. It was a cover-up. That cover-up would explain the inconsistencies, the delayed call, the vague details, and the shifting accounts. It would explain why no scent dogs could track Summer beyond the driveway, why no physical evidence of her leaving the property has ever surfaced, and why the last known image of her is in a car, not at home. Candus has said many things over the years, but one of the most quoted lines is this: "I only went in for 2 minutes." It's repeated again and again as if to anchor a moment in time, to fix the story in place. But those 2 minutes exist inside a 3-hour block of silence. And the further we step back, the more we realize that gap is where the truth likely lies. No law enforcement agency has confirmed that Summer was seen by anyone outside the family after 3:30 p.m. No timeline has been released that accounts for her movements at home. No medical response was called. And to this day, no one has been charged, not for neglect, obstruction, or worse. This kind of silence isn't natural in missing child cases. Typically, there are frantic calls, desperate posts, and door-to-door canvassing. In the Wells case, the first public alert came only after the 911 call, hours after the critical window had already closed. So what happened between 3:30 and 6:30 p.m.? Was it confusion? A slow realization that something was wrong? Or was it something much colder? A decision made behind closed doors to protect someone or everyone? In the absence of new evidence, all we have is the void, a block of time in which a child's life ended or disappeared forever, and in which those around her chose silence over confession. That's why this 3-hour gap matters more than anything else in the timeline. Not because it holds the whole story, but because it may be the only part of the story that hasn't been rewritten. What do you think was happening during that 3-hour window? If you were an investigator, how would you try to solve the mystery of that silence? Every mystery has a missing witness. In the case of Summer Wells, there may be more than one. Over time, the silence hasn't gotten smaller, it has multiplied. Not one, but several people closest to Summer that day have retreated. Some have never spoken publicly, others spoke once and then vanished, and some, perhaps most strangely, have spoken often but always around the truth, never directly about it. Summer disappeared from a home where at least 6 people were present: her mother, her grandmother, her 3 brothers, and later, her father. None of them have been charged. None of them have provided a timeline that holds up under pressure. And yet, 4 years on, not one of them has publicly said, "I know what happened." The grandmother, Candus Bly, is perhaps the quietest voice in the entire case. She lived in a camper just steps from the house. She had a phone. She had access. And yet, since the events of June 15, 2021, she has offered no public statement, not to police, not to the media, not even a single sentence of heartbreak or speculation. She has never confirmed or denied anything. She exists only on paper, in name, and in silence. Why is it grief, fear, or guilt? Or is it something more subtle, like a deliberate strategy? Because silence can be powerful. It can't be contradicted. It can't be disproven. In a household where stories have changed, timelines have shifted, and emotional accounts have fractured, silence becomes the most stable position of all. You can't trip over your words if you never speak them. Then there is Hunter, the 15-year-old boy who was with Candus and Summer the morning of her disappearance. He gave one public interview. He said things that completely shook the narrative. Then he disappeared. Not just from the media, but seemingly from the entire investigation. No follow-ups, no clarifications, no second statement. Some say his family was pressured, that adults warned him not to get involved further, that what he saw and what he said was enough to make someone nervous. Whether true or not, one fact remains: he has been absent ever since. And his silence says more now than his words did then. Don Wells, Summer's father, represents a different kind of silence. His mouth never stopped moving, but his message always avoided one critical thing. Don has spoken to YouTubers, news outlets, and on Facebook live streams. He has defended his family, blamed abduction, and positioned himself as a grieving father. But he has never addressed the gap in time. When asked what happened that afternoon, he deflects. He talks about illegal substances, about prayer, about media harassment, but not about Summer, and not about that day. In his many interviews, one thing becomes clear: Don isn't trying to find Summer. He's trying to shape the story of what happened to her. Then come the boys, the 3 brothers, Summer's siblings. They were inside the house. They were old enough to speak, old enough to hear, perhaps old enough to know, but their voices are missing completely. No interviews, no statements, no recorded memories. Their version of the day has never been heard. And it's not because they can't speak, it's because someone decided they shouldn't. Maybe it was a lawyer, maybe DCS, maybe a family member. But whatever the reason, the result is striking. In a house full of witnesses, no one talks. Which raises a darker question. Was someone told not to talk? Silence in a tragedy is natural for a while. But when it becomes prolonged, calculated, and convenient, it stops being grief and starts being protection. Who benefits from the boys not speaking, from Hunter disappearing, from the grandmother saying nothing? There are legal ways to shield people from scrutiny, especially minors. There are emotional justifications for staying quiet, especially after trauma. But when those silences all serve the same function, then they stop looking like a defense and start looking like a design. Did someone intervene? Was a lawyer brought in early? Were there discussions about liability, custody, or jail time? Or were there warnings given? Not threats, perhaps, but gentle guidance. Don't say anything. Let it go quiet. It's better this way. And so the silence spread, from Candace Harrer's camper to Hunter's neighborhood, to Dawn's live streams, to the children's bedrooms. Not a single voice from within that circle has ever broken the wall, not once. Not even to say, I don't know what happened. And that tells us something important, because people who don't know are often eager to speculate, to offer their guess, their feeling, their version. But people who do know, and who know that speaking will cause damage, they say nothing, they look away, they wait for others to forget, they let the noise of outsiders drown out the signal of their own stillness. And so far, it's worked. There have been no arrests, no confessions, no public fallout. 4 years have passed, and every person who could hold the key to Summer's final moments remains intact, untouched, and largely unchallenged. The silence around Summer isn't just one person's silence. It's a net, a pact. Whether spoken or unspoken, deliberate or instinctual, it has held. And as long as it holds, the truth stays buried, not because it can't come out, but because too many people still have too much to lose if it does. Given the widespread silence and the seemingly coordinated stories, do you believe this is a classic case of family dysfunction and trauma? Or does it point to something more deliberate and sinister? Every theory must answer the same haunting question. If Summer Wells died that day, where is her body? No theory matters more than this one, because if a child dies, there should be something. A body, a bone, a trace, a single thread of physical evidence. But in this case, after 4 years, hundreds of searchers, K-9 units, drones, and dive teams combing the hills of Tennessee, nothing has been found. And that absence doesn't suggest an accident. It suggests a plan. From the very beginning, the scent dogs told a story no one else would. They followed Summer's scent down a trail from the house, along the path known as the dog trail, and lost it near the road at the end of the driveway. Not faded, not faint, gone. That tells us one thing. Summer left that property in a vehicle. But which vehicle? And who was behind the wheel? Don Wells, her father, owned a red pickup truck. He had construction tools, tarps, ropes, and work gloves. A job that kept him away from the house for long hours, working in remote areas, surrounded by dirt, equipment, and unmonitored roads. The kind of man who knows how to dig a hole and make it disappear. He claims he was at work that day, but nothing has confirmed his alibi. No timestamp, no coworker confirmation, no footage, no receipt. Just the insistence of a man whose story, like so many others in this case, shifts slightly each time it's told. What if he wasn't at work the whole day? What if he was called home? What if Candus or her mother or someone else panicked after Summer died and needed help? Let's talk logistics. The timeline between 3:30 and 6:30 p.m. is key. It gives just enough time to realize something is wrong, make a decision, execute a cover-up, and still call 911 as if nothing had happened. Removing a small child's body doesn't take hours. It takes resolve. Wrap her in a blanket, load her into a truck, drive 15 to 30 minutes into the dense Tennessee woods, terrain you know well, and place her where no one will ever look. That's all it takes. That's what's so terrifying, and that's what someone may have done. There were also early reports in the case about a red Toyota Tacoma seen near the Wells property in the days before Summer vanished. Law enforcement asked for the driver to come forward. No one did. The truck was never identified, it was never found, and the request quietly disappeared from updates. Why? Was it a red herring, or did it serve its purpose as a distraction? What if the Toyota Tacoma never mattered, but its mention brought just enough confusion for the real truck to slip by unnoticed? Now let's look at the scene. Summer's home sits on 11 acres of rugged land, unpaved roads, deep woods, hidden pockets, old wells. Even if she was buried on site, it would take a forensic excavation team, not a volunteer search party, to find her. But what if she never stayed there? There's a reason most abduction theories fall apart. There's no forced entry, no witnesses, no tire tracks, no screams. No one saw a stranger, and most damning, no signs of struggle. That makes one thing increasingly likely. Whatever happened, it happened inside the family circle, and the body was removed before anyone else could arrive. This also explains the delay in the 911 call. Candus said she noticed Summer was missing around 6:30 p.m., but law enforcement wasn't called immediately. There was a gap, a critical delay where minutes passed before action was taken. Why? Because someone needed time to move her, to get her out of the house, to clean up, to hide her somewhere that even bloodhounds couldn't find. And so far, it's worked. Some might ask, why not just call 911 right away and report an accident? Here's why. Candus had prior involvement with DCS. There were concerns about substance use, there were questions about the children's safety. Calling 911 after Summer died could have triggered investigations, arrests, and the removal of all the kids. Not just guilt, but fear drove the cover-up, a fear of losing everything. So instead of grief, they chose silence. Instead of panic, they chose planning. Instead of the truth, they gave the world a story. She was abducted, and it worked for a while, but silence leaves clues. So does speed. The dogs losing the trail at the road, that's not just a clue, it's a confession, a body moved, a story buried, and a trail gone cold by design. Even now, law enforcement won't say whether they believe Summer is alive or dead. Why? Because without a body, the case is suspended in limbo. They can't charge anyone. They can't close the case. And they can't find the truth because the truth is buried somewhere by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. It's also likely that the person who moved Summer didn't do it alone. There may have been one who panicked, one who carried, and one who kept the secret. That's how conspiracies work, not with evil, but with fear. One lie leads to another. One choice becomes irreversible. And soon, telling the truth becomes more dangerous than the lie ever was. So where is she? In a ravine, a quarry, beneath the roots of a pine tree. Was she burned, weighed down, or hidden in a construction site and paved over? The possibilities are endless when the window is wide, the terrain is vast, and no one talks. But it can't stay buried forever. One misstep, one confession, one accident, that's all it takes to pull the thread loose. Because someone knows, someone helped, someone stayed quiet. And sooner or later, someone breaks. The body is the missing piece. The end of every theory, the answer to every lie. Until it's found, the silence wins. But when it is, the truth won't just return, it will detonate. Do you think a parent would go to such lengths to hide a body and risk losing their other children? Or would the fear of a murder charge be too great? Every theory must face its own weaknesses. The idea that Summer Wells died by drowning and that her death was covered up in a panic, while compelling, still has major gaps. To move forward, we must ask, does this theory hold up under scrutiny? Or is it just another well-constructed narrative built on possibility but lacking in proof? First and most obvious, there is no body. And without a body, there is no medical confirmation, no autopsy, no cause of death, no evidence of water in the lungs, no sign of trauma, nothing to establish whether Summer died, how she died, or even when. The absence of remains is not just inconvenient, it is a foundational void. And it leaves the drowning theory in a state of perpetual speculation. Second, the cadaver dogs. If Summer died, whether at the park, in the car, or at home, then at some point her body had to be still, lifeless, and in proximity to a known location. Yet, all trained cadaver dogs brought to the Wells property, the car, and the surrounding areas failed to alert. That's not a small issue. Cadaver dogs are highly trained, and while not infallible, they're used around the world to locate human remains, even months after death. If Summer died on that property or in a vehicle or was briefly hidden somewhere, why did the dogs not pick up on it? Third, the lack of corroboration. The theory hinges on Summer possibly drowning or entering respiratory distress after her swim at Warriors Path State Park. But there is only one person who has claimed anything close to that. Hunter, a 15-year-old boy who was with them that day. He said Summer went underwater for 10 to 15 seconds, that she coughed, seemed tired, and later passed out in the car. But Candus, Summer's mother, denies his version entirely. She says he made it up. And beyond his statement, no other person has confirmed seeing Summer sick, coughing, or in distress. Even in the video of her sleeping in the car, there is no context, no audio, no confirmation of time, and no observable distress, just stillness, which could mean anything or nothing at all. And while Hunter's statement might be credible in some aspects, it also comes with complications. Teenagers are not always reliable witnesses, especially under media pressure, family dynamics, and fear. He may have remembered things wrong, or misunderstood what he saw, or worse, exaggerated to sound important. Without other witnesses or physical evidence, his word alone is not enough to prove a medical emergency took place. Then comes the psychological question. Why hasn't anyone confessed? If Summer died accidentally, if her death was hidden out of fear, if guilt weighed on someone's conscience, then why has no one cracked? Not Candus, not her mother, not Dawn, not even one of the 3 young boys in the house. In most cover-ups, someone eventually breaks. Years pass, emotions change, addictions surface, and relationships fracture. Yet, in this case, despite intense public scrutiny, police interviews, and ongoing suspicion, no one has come forward. That silence either points to an extraordinary level of loyalty and coordination, or perhaps there is no truth to confess. Another counterpoint is how plausible the abduction story still appears, despite its flaws. Yes, there's no sign of forced entry, and the dogs lost her scent at the road, but that could also suggest a fast and quiet snatch and grab by someone who knew the terrain, knew the family's routines, and struck in that tiny window where Summer was unsupervised. Stranger abductions are rare, but they do happen, especially in rural areas with minimal surveillance and delayed emergency response. Could this be one of those cases? We also have to admit that no physical evidence supports a drowning. There is no swimsuit recovered, no towel with vomit, no water bottle or item from the park with traces of distress, no wet seat in the car, no proof that Summer even entered the water that day. Aside from a short video clip and conflicting stories, the dry drowning theory is medically sound, but in this case it remains theoretical, not grounded in documentation. Some might argue that all signs point to a cover-up, the silence, the inconsistencies, the strange behavior, but those signs can also emerge from grief, trauma, dysfunction, and fear, not just guilt. Families under pressure often act irrationally. They lie to avoid judgment. They spin stories to cope. That doesn't always mean they committed a crime. Sometimes it means they're overwhelmed, broken, and doing everything wrong while still telling the truth. Ultimately, the drowning and cover-up theory may feel emotionally satisfying. It explains the timeline. It explains the lack of evidence. It gives a narrative for the silence. But it is still, in the end, a narrative. Without physical evidence, a confession, or recovered remains, it cannot be proven, and that should matter. In every major case, there are theories that fit better than facts. They wrap chaos into clarity. They give us someone to blame. But the truth doesn't always fit neatly, it isn't always visible, and it doesn't always follow logic. The risk in clinging too tightly to one theory, even one as seemingly rational as this, is that we stop asking harder questions. We build a story we want to believe and ignore the gaps staring us in the face. And so this theory stands not as a conclusion, but as a possibility, a strong one, but not an airtight one, because a child is missing, and even now no one truly knows why. What do you see as the single greatest weakness in the drowning and cover-up theory? And if you had to start the investigation from scratch, where would you focus your efforts?